Graduations are always a time to celebrate and definitely a time to make a card for someone. So today in this lesson, we are going to be making a fun little watercolor card where we're not actually going to use the die cut. We're actually going to use the paper left behind after we die cut. So I will show you that. This is the Hero Arts Stamp and Cut set, the Congrats set. So there is a stamp, but there's also a Congrats die. And this is my favorite part about this, is there are all different sentiments from marriage, engagement, new baby. So this would work for not just a graduation, but lots of celebrations. So that in and of itself is something to celebrate in my world. We are going to get started by putting the Congrats die on some watercolor cardstock. And I am going to get a little piece of washi tape and pin it down in place so that it does not slip and slide around, go sideways, go off the paper, or anything like that. And then here on my Sizzix Big Shot, I'm going to make my die sandwich and slide it on through. And once it is through, we are going to want to just very, very gently lift off the die and the tape. We don't want to put a lot of pressure or try to rush getting the tape off, because what I don't want to happen, the only thing I don't want to happen is I don't want to rip up the watercolor paper. I want to be very gentle with that. So as we just gently, I know it just takes a minute, just take it easy, let it take the minute that it needs, and just pull off. If you get, like I've got one tiny little spot right there that tore just a tiny bit, and I see one tiny little spot down here, don't stress about it. You just want to avoid tearing and making a big torn strip, because it is going to change how the color reacts. Now that we have our paper ready to go, and you can see there's the die, we can pull this actual word out and use this on a different card. But for today, we're not using it. Now what I can do is go in here and I'm going to work with some greens. I'm working with the Prima Oil Pastels. My favorite way to apply them if I'm working on an untreated surface, meaning a surface that is, maybe it's a paper or something that doesn't have a gesso or some other kind of medium on there to act as a base, I like to apply them onto my mat and then pick up with either a regular paintbrush or a water brush. That way it's all creamy, beautiful, fluid color, and I don't have any problems with any sticky spots or places that won't blend properly. So we're just going to add plenty of water here and keep going. And like I said before, you can work with a water brush if you prefer, or regular paintbrush if that's what you have. So I'm just going to go through with these various greens. We're not going to put a ton of color on this card. We are going to keep it pretty contained to right around the word itself. And then I'm going to come in here with some water and spray and add more water in. Since I didn't have a ton of water on my brush when I first applied the colors, that'll just help spread the color a little bit more. And I can certainly mix the colors that I have here. If I like some colors more than others, I can mix and match. And once happy with everything, I'm just going to go ahead and let it dry. If you wanted to add a little bit of spray, here's a Dilutions mica spray. That'll be a pretty addition. This would be the time to do it. That'll add a little sparkle. If you have something with maybe a little more coverage that you wanted to add, you could do that as well at this time. So we're getting ready to assemble, and if you've noticed here on my card, I had a little bit of color pick up on my finger and deposit here. Now we could get rid of this and start all the way over, but I'm really a big fan of working with it, working it in, and we're gonna do just that. I'm gonna get a little more of my oil pastel here and a bit of water. I'm gonna try to make the brush fairly dry just so that we can pick up some nice pigment. And I am going to add, first I'm going to add a little more color up here, and I'm going to add the color while I'm adding a bit of water to kind of help spread it around. And I'm going to do the same down here so that what happens, you see how I'm just getting very subtle little bursts of color, and it doesn't look like I'm sitting here doing exactly what I'm doing and covering up a mistake, but rather it really looks more intentional, like we're just adding some color and it's a little more free-flowing with the color than originally intended. So guys, definitely don't give up on your projects. Go ahead and keep on trying. So now we're ready to let this dry and assemble our card, making sure everything is dry. And for the card itself, you may want to blot it like I am here. or you might want to take a heat tool or a combination of the two to get it all the way dry. Because we're going to be attaching this to vellum, we really want it to be super, super nice and dry and set so that everything sticks nicely. Once it is dry, you're ready to attach it to your vellum. Now I'm working with a Prima Gold vellum. You don't have to work with vellum. You could work with a plain cardstock. I just really like the sparkle and shine, and it kind of brings, if we're going to do a celebration, I just really like what that adds to my card. I'm going to make sure I get a nice amount of adhesive all over there, and then place it here in the center. And because the die is so detailed, I'm just going to take my time pressing down to make sure that I don't have any funky spots or any twists or anything like that. And then here is my card base. This is just green cardstock that I folded into 3. And we are going to center this on here. And first I'm just going to center it and take a look. And if everything looks good, what I'm going to do is put my adhesive everywhere on the vellum. Well, we don't have to do it absolutely everywhere, but all over the vellum is fine because it is covered so well by the watercolor cardstock. You really don't have to worry about that at all. It won't show through. And then we'll place this so that it's centered. And what I love about this is the way this card is folded. It's actually at the very edge of the fold, but it doesn't look like that when it's closed. It looks totally flat, and then you pop it open and there we go. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we go into the middle, the other thing that I want to do that'll kind of help tie everything together is a little splash of gold, just to add a different color, but also kind of bring together those spots where I was doing cover up and doing fix up. It's just going to help make it very little more splattery, a little more painty, so that it won't look like I was fixing up an oops. But you know what, guys? This is crafting. It's definitely not perfection, and there's definitely homemade oopsies happening all the time. Now I won't want to apply too much heat because I don't want to warp the vellum, but I'll let that dry a little bit, and then we'll work on the inside. Now you have a couple of options. Here's an option on this card where you can see that I actually just took a piece of the vellum and folded it and then inserted it into the card like so, cutting off the excess, creating an extra pocket. For this card, I feel like this is long enough and I'm going to be able to put in a gift card, a check, or anything else, so I'm not going to worry about that. Instead, what I'm going to do is just take a bit of adhesive on my card, just on the top and bottom, and fold it over and press, so now I've got that nice opening. The other thing that I did on this card that I will show you now is to take the congrats stamp, and you can work with embossing ink. You can also work with watermark ink. And I'm just going to do it once, but you could do it as many times as you wanted. You can stamp it, and then if working with an embossing ink, I like to heat set it since it stays wet for a little bit. That way it won't smudge or smear, and it will create that watermark effect. So it's going to be just slightly darker than the cardstock that you stamp it on. And I love that because that just adds a subtle little sentiment. Now back to the front here. If we want to add a small sentiment, for example, this one is "We're so proud of you." This one's "On your graduation." We're just going to go back to that same stamp set and pick what we would like. I'm going to pick "You Did It" because I know at the end of any graduation, there's definitely that sense of accomplishment. And I'm going to go in with archival ink because we want to make sure that it doesn't react with our watercolor mediums. And then just place it like so. Whoop! Luckily, I dropped that over here off the card. My goodness. So congrats, you did it on your graduation. Proud of you. Whatever sentiment you would like to use, there's a lot of ways that you can customize this card idea for your graduate.